Well, today is the feast of Saint Agnes. I don't know if you've ever heard of Saint Agnes. She was a young girl. She was only about 12 years old, and this was in the 4th century. And unfortunately, well, fortunately for her in some ways, but she was martyred. She was killed because she was such a good person. And that's why I'm wearing red today, because we wear red whenever we celebrate a martyr's feast day or Pentecost. Now, some of you are about that age, I would imagine, 12, 13. And it took a lot of courage for her to be willing to stand up for what she believed in. And just as we prayed that psalm, "In God I trust, I shall not fear," that was very characteristic of Agnes. And also in that first reading today, we hear the story about David and Saul. And I think maybe you remember when David, even though he was just a young boy, he went up and he slayed the giant, the Philistine. The Philistine was all dressed in armor and had a sword. And David, the only thing David had was a slingshot. I don't know if any of you have a slingshot, but he had 5 stones and a slingshot. And the giant just laughed at him. They thought, "What a fool you are. I'm going to cut you up and throw you out for the birds to eat." Well, David had a lot of courage. I'm sure he was praying, "In God I trust, I shall not fear." And he picked up his slingshot, and the first shot, the rock, the stone, went right into the giant's forehead and killed him. And then David went up and took the giant's own sword and cut off his head. Now, that's kind of violent, but I think what we need to know is that, God uses what is weak, as we prayed, to confront or confound the strong. And in today's first reading, Saul, who's the king, is jealous of David because they are praising him more than Saul. We can all get jealous of each other. I'm sure you experience jealousy sometimes. Like in the classroom, maybe some kids that seem to be smarter than you, or they look better than you, or they can play sports better than you. I think sometimes we feel threatened by other people's gifts. But often when we feel threatened, it's a sign of our own insecurity, that we don't appreciate ourselves enough. We don't appreciate the gifts that God has given us. And we need to own them. There's nothing more important than how you feel about yourself. How you feel about yourself is really important. And how you feel about yourself needs to be based on how God feels about you. And it needs to be based on your family and your friends who love you. Self-esteem is really important. And so whenever we feel threatened by other people's gifts, we need to own our own. And that's not pride. That's not pride. It's humility. Jesus said, "Let your light shine before others so that others can see your goodness and give praise to God." It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about God. The God is so good. And so we need to let our light shine. And David did. David let his light shine and gave praise to God. So I want to invite you to take just a moment to acknowledge the gifts that you have and the gift that you are. Who you are is the greatest gift. Now, maybe you're good at sports, maybe you're good in the classroom, or maybe you are good at music or something, and that's wonderful, but it's not as wonderful as you are and as I am. God loves us the way we are because God created us the way we are. So let us take just a moment to acknowledge the gift that each one of us is and the light that Jesus asks us to shine so that others can see our goodness and give praise to God.